Bonsoir. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all the Olympics and Paralympics fans here today. We couldn't have chosen a better day to welcome you to La Maison Française for this special screening, given that today, December 3rd, is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. As you all know, just a few months ago, Paris welcomed over 10,000 Olympic athletes and 4,000 Paralympic athletes. And this evening, you will have the chance to relive the joys, the struggles, and the amazing accomplishments of all of these athletes, not to mention the immense efforts undertaken by all of the volunteers, security personnel, performers, production staff, and event organizers who made this unforgettable 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games possible. The trip back in time that we'll be taking today is courtesy of the heart of the Games, Au coeur des Jeux, the incredible documentary by Jules and Gédéon Naudet, the French-American filmmakers known for their powerful 9/11 documentary. With the heart of the Games, Jules and Gédéon take us on a behind-the-scenes tour of the opening and closing ceremonies for both the Olympics and Paralympics and give us a first-hand look at the dreams, determination, disappointments, and dazzling triumphs of these unbelievable athletes and their families. The film also pays tribute to the tireless dedication of the tens of thousands of French and foreign volunteers from both the public and private sectors, without whom these games would not have been possible. I'd like to give special thanks to the Naudet brothers, especially Jules, who is here with us today. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to catch a sneak preview of 2 episodes of this 5-part documentary, which hasn't come out in the US yet. Following the film screening, we'll have the chance to hear more about the 2024 Games from 4 of the main players, if I may say so. Filmmaker Jules Naudet, Trevon Jenifer, Paralympic wheelchair basketball medalist who won his 4th medal in Paris with Team USA. That means that Trevor is 4 for 4 when it comes to the Paralympics. Amazing. Congratulations, Trevor. Samuel Ducroquet, who is our sports ambassador and a friend, and Dan Mickelson, sports diplomacy chief at the State Department and Samuel's American counterpart. Samuel and Dan were both with us in Paris this summer, but today they will be focusing on sports diplomacy and upcoming events because the Paris Games marked the beginning of the decade of French-American sports. The list is long. So first we had the Olympics in 2024 in Paris, of course. Next, the US, along with Mexico and Canada, will be hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup. For those of you who don't follow soccer, suffice to say this is the biggest global sports event outside the Olympics. And also, I'm sorry to brag a little bit about this, but France has made it to half of the World Cup finals over the last 25 years. Thank you. Just a few years from now, we'll have the LA 28 Summer Games, followed by the French Alps 2030 Winter Olympics. Not long after that, the US will be hosting the 2031 Men's Rugby World Cup and the 2033 Women's Rugby World Cup. And last but not least, we'll have the 2034 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. Needless to say, France and the US will have many opportunities to share best practices and collaborate on these events over the next 10 years, which is what brings Samuel Ducroquet to Washington this week. Lastly, I'd like to thank Washington Post sports writer Rick Mays for agreeing to serve as our moderator today. I hope you all enjoy this moving film and what promises to be a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much.
Third place currently.
My name is Rick Mace. I'm a sports reporter with the Washington Post. I was in Paris for the Olympics. It was my 8th Olympics, and I feel like I just saw something that was entirely different. The emotions, the triumph, everything was right in there, and you captured it beautifully. We're very fortunate to have a very esteemed panel here to discuss the magical and memorable summer that we all had in Paris. These games were the first to achieve gender parity. You can see our panel isn't quite there yet, but we are going to do our very best. Let me introduce to you everyone that is up here with us. We'll start with Jules Naudet. Along with his brother, he's documented some of the most historical moments of my lifetime. 9/11, the terrorist attacks in Paris, January 6th here in Washington, D.C., and just created this beautiful masterpiece, and thank you for sharing it with us. Next to him is Trevon Jenifer, 4-time Paralympian, 3 gold medals, 1 bronze, obviously won a gold in Paris. Thank you for joining us, and a local guy for those that are from around here. And then Ambassador Samuel Ducroquet, visiting us from Paris. He's the 5th person to hold this title, and what an awesome time for you to have this job. And thank you for joining us. Thank you. And Dan Mickelson, right here to my immediate left, holds a similar position for the U.S. State Department in charge of sports diplomacy. He was on the ground in Paris taking notes, and as noted earlier, there is going to be a lot of very important sporting moments here in the United States. So we will look to you to make sure you pass along those lessons to everybody. Joel, let's start with you. The athletes spend years, a lifetime really, preparing for an Olympics. You did not have that luxury. This sounded like very much of a sprint to kind of put this together, and I can't even believe what the finished product looked like so soon after the Olympics. Can you kind of take us behind the scenes and explain how you pulled this off and created this kind of remarkable visual feast in such a short amount of time?
Well, thank you very much to the French Embassy for having us here tonight. And thank you for moderating. I'm so impressed with being especially next to you, because it was incredible what you did, and really the games were really fantastic to see. So thank you for your participation, making us all dream and with you when you were there. This started for us, as you said, we've done, my brother and I, lots of different documentaries. For once, hopefully, we're making people cry for the right reasons and not terrorist attacks or other things like that. But it took us 4 years to just get the authorization, which we approached the International Olympic Committee. And we almost didn't believe it. It was soon there, much sooner than we thought. And then suddenly, it's like, oh my God, we actually are doing it. And so we have to prepare. We were very fortunate to be surrounded by incredibly talented people, because making documentaries is like a little family. You need to get along with everyone, which you don't all the time, but hopefully you still love each other at the end. And so it was kind of between a family and a strange vacation with people you didn't know at first. But it was incredible. I had only seen the Olympic Games on the television, and suddenly to see, and that was the idea, was we wanted to really see what it was like behind the scene. How do you organize the biggest event in the world? And to see it made, and also to have a kind of a point of view of human beings. Normally, historically, you always have a official film, which looks more like a kind of a YouTube compilation of the best moments of the Olympics. And here we wanted to add a little bit of heart and humanity behind it, to see the athletes, but also their families, the people doing it behind. But we had started filming about 3 months before the Olympics, which are the first 3 episodes, actually, that we'll spare you that tonight. But it's really the kind of the last leg of it, as they're finishing up all of the different sites, as they're arguing about budgets, because there's always never enough money for that. And but it was filming the games with kind of a strange roller coaster. We would work about 17 hours a day. We had 5 teams of camera people and sound recorders and all that. Plus, since we were doing it for French television, which were airing literally right after, 2 days after the closing ceremony of the Paralympic Games, we were filming and editing at the same time, which means we had 5 different teams in the editing room, which we would visit normally at the 18th hour at the end of every day, and try to capture as much as we could. We knew we were going to miss a lot of things. We accepted that, but it was trying to capture these little moments, these iconic, whether it is the Olympic flame in that incredible balloon, whether it was that opening ceremony. And very early on, we wanted to be different, and that's why, it's a little bit weird to see it, but it's true. We play with the timeline. The idea was not to do a traditional documentary series with kind of half an hour with the opening ceremony, and then do it chronologically with the Olympic Games, then the Paralympic Games. We wanted to mix everything. One, because we thought, and the Paralympic Games and the Olympic Games for us are the same games, and I think it should be on the same level, and that's why we wanted to mix everything together. But it was really to try to give a little inkling to people what it takes as organizers, but also as athletes, and what the families go through, what people around you go through, and the practice, and the people like the people from Otobok, which we discovered there, but which you knew about, with these kind of unsung heroes in the shadows that are there all the time. It was, to put a little human face on this strange, fascinating event that plays out every 4 years.
How did you decide on the characters? I mean, the great thing about the Olympics and Paralympics is every day is a memorable day that people remember forever. And, whether it's Simone Biles or Katie Ledecky or Jessica Long, the stories just resonate so much, and you captured them so beautifully. How did you settle on the ones that you felt belonged in the film?
Filming a lot and praying a lot and having a lot of luck and having incredible people. Documentary filmmaking, I think it was Hitchcock who said, when you're doing a movie, the director is God. When you're doing a documentary, God is the director. Because you can never know what you're going to expect. So you prepare. You approach certain athletes or certain families, the ones who want to talk, because we're coming to bother them as they're preparing for the most important time in 4 years, and we, by hunch, by happenstance, by meetings, we say, okay, let's try to film this. Let's try to give a different point of view, and we were just very lucky and to be able to be there at the right moment. But it was easy. Paris. I think everywhere you would turn your camera, it was absolutely beautiful. They were revolutionizing absolutely everything about the game. So whenever you pointed the camera, most of the time, I think it was the good place to do it. So.
Yeah, there's just so much emotion involved. I experienced it here in my seat, but you might have experienced it on your couch watching on TV. I can't imagine what it's like for an athlete to be competing. So Trevon, let me ask you. This is your 4th one. You started with 2012 in London, bronze medal there, gold in Rio, gold in Tokyo, gold in Paris. How are these games different for you?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you to the French Embassy for allowing me to be here. Also NRH, who helped me get to this point right now. But for me, I think the documentary said it beautifully. One of the things that people don't tend to see when they see myself or they see my medal is like the family component behind it, right? I wouldn't be there if it wasn't for them. And this is on the heels of, 2021, when we're in Tokyo and it's COVID, no fans in the stands, and, it's eerie. You're sitting at a free throw line and you could hear a pin drop, and you go from that to 13,000 French fans just blowing the top off of an arena. It's something that I will remember. it's crazy. We're sitting here, we're watching them sing the national anthem. We're playing France in the quarterfinals, and you're literally yelling the anthem, and I'm like, I can't hear myself think right now. This is how loud this place is. But it's beautiful. They brought the energy that we've been missing for the last couple quads, right? We go to Tokyo and it's silent. You know, even opening ceremonies, the music is loud, but there's no energy. I mean, the moment we touched down in Paris, like you could feel the energy back into the game. And
Did
that
it feel like
awesome.
it was pent up, like it was just bubbling and ready to come out?
Absolutely. I mean, because you think about it, like us athletes, we train 4 years to get to this one moment. And in that one moment, you're sharing it not only with your teammates, your family, people that are in the stands, and the people that are watching on TV. So if you can imagine everything that you've trained for the last 4 years and maybe even decades on before that is coming to that one moment.
I think the film kind of captured that beautifully, especially following around some of the family members. And you see what it means, not just to the athlete, but everyone around the athlete that helps you get to that point. Ambassador Ducroquet, what was your role in Paris? And can you kind of walk us through, from your perspective, what did you want the world, what did we all want the world to take away from these games?
Yeah, well, first of all, what Trevon just said, it kind of rings a bell to me because I was Olympic attaché back in Tokyo, and I fully remember the ceremonies, the competitions without athletes, and we knew that 4 years later, actually 3 years later, there would be a little bit of pressure on us because it would be the moment, the first games post-COVID, post-pandemic, and we knew that we had to deliver because the expectations were so high. Well, finally, yes, sports is back. The stands are full again. And Paris is hosting the games, so it is something special. And we knew that we had to deliver an outstanding competition and Olympics and Paralympics moments. So our role at the Foreign Ministry was to kind of contribute to this global effort that we actually see in the Brother Naudet documentary. And I think even if we don't see the Foreign Ministry in that documentary, we were part of the adventure, part of this family. And you also mentioned the family. And I think when I look back at this, I feel like we belonged to this great journey together. So more specifically for the Foreign Ministry, our role was twofold. There was one delivery part and one diplomatic aspect. The delivery part is a bit technical, so it feels a bit awkward to talk about it after such great emotions, but it had to do with visas, consular issues. How do you make sure that the 300,000 members of the Olympic and Paralympic family can actually enter the country to make the show happen? How do you ensure that the hundreds of dignitaries that will travel to France, to the heads of states, the heads of government, the sovereigns, the sports minister, are going to come to Paris and be welcome in the best conditions, because it has an impact on the image of your country, obviously. If you have dignitaries that are extremely pissed because rain is falling on their head on the opening ceremony, for example, wait, it happened. Well, obviously, it is not what you want, but you need to make sure that at least you do your best in this respect. Thirdly, in terms of communication, what are the messages? This was also your question. What are the messages that you want to convey overseas, etc., etc., etc. So for the delivery, this is what we were in charge of at the Foreign Ministry, and we had to coordinate the work of teams that had never worked on the games before, that had no idea of how do you actually handle this? How do you handle the protocol under the scrutiny of the International Olympic Committee? You're not free. You're not free to handle it the way you want. So that's the delivery part. And what we wanted to do at the Foreign Ministry was to prepare everything we could and anticipate as much as possible so that during games time we could focus on sports diplomacy. So how can we actually be not behind our screens, behind our computers, sending out emails, checking that the visas are actually delivered or that the protocol is working well, but be on the ground and be able to maximize all the efforts that not only France, but also the foreign delegations were putting in making it a success. Team USA House, welcoming the fans and making a big celebration. Same with all the different pavilions, national pavilions, making it possible for the fans to enjoy, celebrate their athletes, helping out the international organizations such as, I don't know, the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, celebrating the impact, the positive impact that sports can have on sustainable development. Be out there to have bilateral meetings to make sure that the Games is not only a celebration of athletes, which we really appreciate, and that's the core of the event, but how do we also capitalize for France to extend somehow, or show what it has best to offer, and also use sport as a catalyzer for the strengthening of foreign relations.
I want to touch on that a little bit more, but the end result of these games were so stunning. And one great thing about the documentary is it kind of pulls back the curtain and shows you the stress and pressure that kind of went into pulling it off. I wonder from your vantage point, what did you see? He's watching Mr. Jolly kind of stressed before the opening ceremonies. It's easy to chuckle about now, but I know at the time no one was laughing. What kind of pressure and stress did you see behind the scenes and from the organizers in trying to pull this thing off?
For me, I was like Thomas Joly. I mean, to be honest, I remember very clearly. I was telling Damien about this while the documentary was showing. We were together with all the sports ministers in the basement of the Meridian Hotel, getting ready to move and leave for the opening ceremony. So no window, dark, and we're enjoying a glass of champagne, looking at the great breakdancing show. And then we move up and we get ready to get on board to board the buses. And I see the rain falling. And I just remember all the images and the photos of the opening ceremony that we were sending out to our embassies around the world saying, okay, this is what the opening ceremony is going to look like. Sunset, everyone's just happy on the banks of the river, and that is going to be the opening ceremony. And I remember all our counterparts around the world being like so excited about the opening ceremony, and then you come out of the hotel and you're like, okay, it doesn't really look like the picture. But in fact, it was fantastic. And after a while I was very pissed, like Thomas Joly, looking at the rain, looking at the dignitaries being rained on, and feeling very depressed. I was receiving messages from friends around the world actually telling me, well, this is awesome. This is fantastic. So I decided to cheer up and enjoy the moment, and I eventually managed to do, but this was extremely stressful. And after the ceremony was over, we're like, okay, let's go now. We can finally enjoy the games and make sure we're on the roll until September 9th.
Dan, I got to tell you, we were watching the closing ceremonies, myself and a lot of journalists, and we just kept saying, boy, the U.S. has a high bar to kind of reach. Yeah. I'm curious from your perspective, watching this unfold, both the Olympics and the Paralympics, which I know you attended, what were your takeaways? What kind of struck you? What most impressed you?
Well, first, thanks to the French Embassy for having us here. Congrats on the documentary. I'm looking forward to seeing the 4 more installations. Congratulations on another medal. And Ambassador Samuel, congrats on the Games. You've given the world a great gift, your country has. You've also given the United States a great challenge. So what are my takeaways? One, don't let ideas hold you back. What you all accomplished, you just said with the opening ceremony, Celine Dion, the show you put on was, you broke the mold. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to work across the US government to do the visas, like you said, and the protocol. But how do we think outside the box from the government standpoint and take the Olympic and Paralympic spirit and spread it across the country? What are the unique ways that we can do that? Our organizing committee, LA28, is going to put out a fantastic games in Southern California. But what really struck me while I was in Paris, and I was only there a short time, but much of our team who are in the crowd tonight, including our Deputy Assistant Secretary who's here, Nicole Elkon, I think we spent a total of, our team, 4 or 5 weeks in Paris, really absorbing it. And as I talked to the team, we really felt that it was not just a Paris Games, it was a France Games. So one of my takeaways and our biggest challenge from the government side is, how do we take this coast to coast? LA 28 is going to put on an amazing games for Southern California, and they're focused on a lot of legacy pieces for Southern California. But how do we make this for all of America? And so that's one of my takeaways. Don't have a great answer for it yet, but already encouraged that Oklahoma is going to get a bite at the apple. They're hosting softball and canoeing. There's some conversations happening that Casey Wasserman has been public about where cricket might be played. Should we play it on the East Coast? And he'll make that decision. But some of this will happen naturally, and some of it is a challenge on our shoulders, aside from the protocol and the visas and the crisis management of figuring out how to spread the love across the country.
I think if you put surfing back in Tahiti, maybe you get Jules and myself back out there covering too.
You're gonna have to fight with LA, who loves their surfing.
It's true.
I think what you said, I think it's being privy to a lot of the conversations before, and the concern that Tony Estanguet in particular and his team were having is how do you have an entire country have your back, especially, French people were weird, we like to oppose and say, no, it's not going to work and all that. And so you have a very contrarian kind of culture. And what they found is that really, it started the year before, or the leading up to the games. Every public school, for example, was teaching things about the Olympics. Math became about the Olympics. History became about the Olympics. So everything already, the children in every class were making Olympic flags, were doing things like that. So we brought that back to their house. And it was a way to start. Then I think the moment where it really clicks, and a lot of organizers of Olympics have said that, it's the moment where the flame arrives in your country. You have this 3 months period where the Olympic flame travels through entire communities. I think you had said 8 million people attended that 12,000 kilometer journey that the flame took all around France and in Tahiti and in the Caribbean, so the French islands, etc. And that moment really crystallized that the games are here. And it became something to celebrate. Every community was part of it. I don't know, it'd probably be the same here, with every state can kind of own a piece of it in a way, and seeing the flame as an experience for the audience, to the spectators, the ones who will not go to LA to see it, but to see the Olympic flame pass under their windows in their where they live in their counties. I think is a big way that starts that magic that they've been waiting. It's here. It's that. Object, that flame, which is the symbolization of the games, it becomes tangent.
Especially since it's arrived in Marseille and not in Paris. I mean, it entered the territory by the sea in the south of France, not in the host city or one of the host cities. This was also a way to connect with the rest of the country, not only the capital city.
Yeah. Trevor, let me ask you from the athlete perspective, when you look forward to LA, and I don't want to put you on the spot and make you decide if you're going to compete in 4 years or not, but what were some of the takeaways for you? What could LA do that could match? And we heard a lot about, the Michelin star chefs in the athlete village. We heard about some of the huge steps that Paris took to become more of an accessible city, which, is not easy for a centuries-old European city. But what was your experience like that? What kind of tips could LA take to make sure the athletes are having the same great experience they had in Paris?
Absolutely. So like a big thing, which you two, kind of touched on, was allowing the fans to come in and be a part of it, because that's where a lot of the energy came from in an arena and in the sports complex world. But for me, it was like letting the energy build up through one of the games and then let it free flow through all of the games. For me, this is the first time that I felt that the Paralympic Games had a parallel energy level to the Olympic Games. And it was like, okay, it wasn't just, the Olympics and now we're gonna take a break off and we're gonna see it dive down a little bit. It was like, okay, we're here and we're gonna stay here and the level's high. And that's something that we felt from like the moment we touched down. When I tell you the energy we felt from the moment we touched down, going through the airport, right? Going through the public transportation to get to the village. And then once we're in the village with all the volunteers, like all of that had an effect on my experience. So I think that being able to understand that like these are two sports, right? And I think like the energy was the same coming from the spectators, from what I heard after the games. It was just phenomenal to know that we were on the same playing field.
Something to build on. I mean, I think NBC embraced the Para Games more. There were more media outlets there. The stories were resonating a lot more.
It was chapter 2 as well. I mean, I think everyone was keen to see the games back because we had this little break, of course, between the Olympics and the Paralympics. But the opening ceremony of the Paralympics was fantastic in the sense that everyone was like, the games are back. We hear the song again. We see the mascots again, and the athletes are back as well. So this was something absolutely fantastic.
And if I can add part of that, one of my takeaways was coming in from the airport the day of the closing ceremonies. There were many opportunities to be engaged without even having a ticket. Like I stumbled upon the marathon and I stood there for an hour, and we talked about volunteers before. I just chatted with volunteers who were friendly and wonderful. It's another great challenge that we have in Southern California is matching the spirit of the volunteerism. But just to build on your point, everyone had an opportunity to be involved in the games, whether you could have a ticket or not, watching the swimming in the Seine, being around the stadiums. It was really fantastic.
Well, there's so many universals about the games. I mean, we're watching breakdancing. Who would have ever thought we'd be watching competitive breakdancing on television, and the whole world watched it together? And I guess that kind of takes us to this whole idea of sport diplomacy. And maybe, can you guys give us an example, maybe Sam, Dan, what role can sport play in diplomatic matters? What kind of universal language does it provide, and how can it kind of bring us together, especially as other forces are pulling us so far apart?
Sports is an amazing convening power. Like, look at what happened in Paris last summer. It showed us that there's more things that unite us than divide us. And we can then use sport to have conversations about issues from gender equality to disability rights to whatever the issues we may want to talk about. But sport really brings people to the table or to Paris, and they will bring them to LA, where we will then use it to have the diplomatic conversations and around tables or panels in the stands. People are more willing to have a conversation when they're in a more relaxed environment, I think, and I think sports provides that. And looking to the next 4 years, we've got plenty of opportunities in the United States to have tough conversations, and I think sports are going to be a really wonderful way for us to just have those conversations and try to figure out where we have commonality.
I also think that sports put everybody on an equal footing. Whatever the language, whatever the origins, whatever the preference. If you engage with sports, you're able to speak to anybody around the world, because wherever you are, wherever you work and engage with people, you know that they will have practice sports, one kind of sports, or they're interested in it. So it's a good way to engage a dialogue, strengthen the ties, as I said earlier, and you can do it in many different ways. It can be the performance. It could be sports and culture. It can be sports and science, sports and environment. It's just a very flexible tool that you could use the way you want. And in this sense, from a diplomatic point of view, it's a boon.
Trevon, did you notice that? Take us into the village. Did you find yourself having conversations with people from different backgrounds, countries, cultures? What is that like to go in there and it's kind of melting pot in the middle of the city?
It's awesome. And I mean, something that was true was about Autobot, right? Understand where my room is, where their cafeteria is, chocolate muffins, and where Autobot is. I mean, myself personally, I had them work on not only my everyday chair, but also my competition chair. So like these are different opportunities where you get to meet, if you can imagine, everyone across the world coming to this one location in the village to have something worked on, right? But then you're able to have conversations with different athletes from different sports that you might not even run into while I'm at Bercy Arena playing basketball, I might run into someone that's playing track and field at a completely different arena from a completely different side of the world. So it was an opportunity for us to be able to have conversations, but it also shows you the difference in what I am privy to, like having this type of equipment for myself and what other people don't have the ability to have, and they're able to get that at this facility completely for free. And I don't think people see that. And so to see that being shown on the screen is awesome, because like when you walk into Autobot and you see that these people are getting the resources that they need, that they might not be able to get in their home country, it's something that an athlete deserves.
And Jules, we're about to watch the fourth episode. And Jules, I wonder if you can I wonder if that's what drew you to this story. I mean, this is much different than following firefighters around on 9/11 or talking to spiritual leaders around the world. What was it about that you attracted to this story? Why was it important for you and your brother to dig in here and share this with the world?
Well, it's not that different in a way, because our work has always been trying to show a world that you normally don't see. It's impossible to try to put yourself in the shoes of a firefighter, a president, a world leader, or an athlete. You all we see is the uniform, is the title that they have, and it's very intimidating. And the idea was always for us to try to show that underneath that uniform, underneath that title, there's a human being. There's a dad, there's a mom, there's a father, a son. And once you can communicate that, then you can understand. You cannot relate to your performance or what it means to be a god of sport, but we can try to at least understand as a human being, seeing the families and what it takes on them, and the support system you have, or just your hopes, your dreams, and that's always what we've always wanted to do. And so, in a way, it's the same thing we've done before. Fortunately, on a much happier subject and on something that is so unifying, because, as you were saying, I think sports has that unique ability. I think it was at the 98 World Cup, where Harlem Désir, who was a very important anti-racism person, said the World Cup that France won did more against racism than 50 years of his own challenge and own fight. Because sports has that unique ability to unite everyone. When you watch a team, when you watch an athlete, there's no more country, there's no more color of their skin, there's no more nothing. It's just you're rooting all for the same person, the same team, the same thing. It's unifying. And we saw it in France. Paris, you have to understand, for the people who were not there, about 3 weeks before, let's say a month before the games, where the government is called by the president to be cancelled. You have snap elections. You have all that. Everyone is anxious. We don't know what to expect politically with what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Ukraine. It was a pretty bad time. And suddenly, when these games started, it was like a golden parenthesis. Everything stopped. People were smiling to each other, people were talking to each other, people watching, had the games on non-stop on television, and it gave us a reprieve. And only sports can do that, to unite an entire planet around their team, their athletes, their flag. But it's not even about the flag, it's about being together, being able to share that experience. And it's magical, and it's only sports who can do that, and we saw it firsthand. But the stories is always the same. It's a human story, and sports is anything but it's a human story at heart.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your experience and perspectives. And I think we have one more great episode to go, so thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.